Today we are going to continue the chapter we have started last week, which is language and gender. We will talk about how English language is sexist language and other ways which we determine how language is used to indicate sexism. We talk about unmarked and marked terms, then we define what's meant by semantic derogation. Then we discuss the topic of do women and men talk differently, and we consider how much talk and interruption, back channel support, and Hedges and epistemic models which are used by women. So as a definition for the two terms, marked and unmarked, the term marked means noticeably unusual, and marked terms refer to anything which deviates from the norm, and this deviation is signaled by additional information. Now we can understand this better if we compare it with unmarkedness. Unmarked terms is a linguistic form which is neutral insofar as they represent the norm and carry no additional information. And if you look at those two images, we have a male nurse, which is a deviation from the norm, and we have a female nurse, which is the norm. So when we say male nurse, we are carrying more information, we are giving more information, because we usually have nurse as a female, but unusually to have a male as a nurse. So the male nurse is the marked form because it is unusual, because it deviates from the norm, it carries more information, while the unmarked term nurse represents the norm, which is the female nurse. It carries no additional information. I don't have to say she is a female nurse, because it is the norm that once you say nurse, we know it is or she is a female. So it is the unmarked term. Markedness and unmarkedness, if we have another example, it is common for unmarked terms to refer to males. Example, waiter, we know that it refers to a male, host, actor, etc. While to refer to a female, the term are marked by adding a suffix, and in this example, waitress, hostess, actress, those terms refer to female. They are marked because we add another information, we add another suffix, which is the ESS. Now this can make terms used for females different from the standard, or they deviate from the standard, that they deviate from the norm. So these examples can be interpreted as sexist because they imply that normal or the high status people are men but not women. Then we move to what we call semantic derogation, and before we express this, we need to have a simplified definition of what this term means. Semantic derogation, the word semantic is a linguistic term referring to meaning, and the verb derogue means to cause to seem inferior or to look less than the others. Now let's have an example from English and see how semantic derogation can be applied. The example we have is the two words master and mistress. If I say he is my master, the word master here usually means he is my boss, or he has more power than me. But if we say she is my mistress, we do not have the same meaning, because mistress is usually interpreted as meaning she is my illicit lover. Thus words for women tend to lose their interpretation. They become of a less status, and they are basically marked terms. So words used for women when they are used in comparison with words used for men or masculine, they lose their status and refer to women with a sexual connotation. This has clearly happened to the word mistress, which refers to a female, rather than to master, which refers to male. So what we are trying to show that certain terms in the English language shows sexism toward one person rather than the other. It shows here in this example, it is concerned with showing sexism towards men, but towards women, but not men. We move to sexism in discourse. We have discussed the word master and mistress, which indicate that we could have sexism in one word. Now we move to show how the English language can be sexist in discourse, which means in more than one word, in a phrase or in a sentence or in an utterance. Before we start, we need to indicate that sexism is sometimes located not in specific words, but in the discourse, i.e. in the whole utterance or a sentence. Now we have an example from Robin Mackey from the Observer newspaper. This was on the 10th of March 2002. Robin says, lying politicians, spin doctors, and cheating sportsmen and husbands will suddenly find life uncomfortable. Now I read again, and notice the use of the word sportsmen but not sportswomen, and husbands but not wife. Now this is an example of sexism against men but not women this time. So lying politicians, spin doctors, and cheating sportsmen and husbands will suddenly find life uncomfortable. So the above example shows how sexism in discourse can be used, where the reference is to men, sportsmen, husbands, not to women. He did not say sportswomen or wives. Now we could have other example of how sexism is expressed in language. Some of those examples are clear, they are not indirect, they are direct, where the sexism is very clear, where the speaker clearly and obviously indicates that men or women supports one gender rather than the other. So what we are discussing here is other explicit examples of sexism, and the word explicit means clear or obvious, direct example of sexism. A journalist explains why media awards ceremonies are given so much media coverage. And he says, we get to see beautiful actresses and interesting actor. Now he says this sentence to tell us why the ceremonies of awarding, of giving media award take a lot of media coverage. And he says, we get to see beautiful actresses and interesting actors. Now this shows the emphasis on women's look, on how women look, and on men's personality. So this is again a clear insult or a clear sexist way of representing women, that the interest is in their looks rather than in their personalities. Another way of expressing sexism through language is in advertisement, and here we have a specific example which has appeared in 2002, where a well-known chocolate bar appeared with a new label. And if you examine this image of this particular advertisement, this chocolate bar is in fact shows a clear insult, a clear example of sexism towards female, towards girl, by clearly stating that this product is not for girls, and using a dark blue foil. And we know that blue is mainly used for masculines, for males rather than females, for boys rather than girls. And even the wrapping of this chocolate bar has a circular icon of a woman crossed with a red line, meaning that women are not allowed to buy this product, and this product is only for men, so it is not for girls. So this is a clear insult. This is a clear way of using sexism toward female in language. So this product seems to use the term girl and the icon where the girl is crossed with a red line as an insult. Now we move to the topic of, do women and men talk differently? Is there a difference in the way women and men talk, or do they have the same or common way of talking? So the question we need to discuss, is there any difference between men's and women's talk? There are common stereotypes about women's talk. Nowadays, even in the Arabic culture, one of the stereotypes against women is that they talk a lot. Women talk more than men, and women never stop talking. This is what we usually stereotype women in our society. Now, these stereotypes implies that women's talk is plentiful. They talk a lot. They spend a long time talking, but whatever they talk is not of a very important significance. Their talk is pointless. This is an example of how women are stereotyped in general and in our societies as well. Now, there is a new research which proves that this stereotype is not valid, where the result of this research indicate that men on the whole talk far more than women. The fact that we in spite of this research, we still have people who know that women talk more. No, women spend a long time talking about nonsense. They spend a long time chatting about trivial things. But if you provide this research, if you provide these results to the people and try to convince them, no, the research has proved the opposite, that men talk more than women, you still have people who do not believe the result of this research. Now, the idea that they do not believe the result of this experiment or this research indicates that women and their activities are undervalued. People in certain societies undervalue or underestimate women or underestimate women's activities. Sorry. So, what are the differences between women's and men's use of language? Is there a difference in the way men and women talk? So differences at the level of phonology, we have differences at the level of syntax, and we have differences at the level of discourse. So yes, there is a difference. Women and men way of talking are different in phonology. Women and men vary in their pronunciation. Men pronounce words in a different way than women do. There is also the syntactic difference, where the different differences in the kinds of the grammatical construction both men and women use. Usually men use certain type of structure while women use another. So there is a phonological or a pronunciation difference, and there is a syntactic or grammatical difference. We are in fact not interested in those two types of differences, but we are interested in number 3, which is the discoursal difference, which is the difference in the kind of the things that they talk about. So we will consider, to discuss the discoursal difference, we will consider how much women talk. We will consider the interruption, who interrupts who, do women interrupt men or men interrupt women. Then we will talk about the back channel support, which is the feedback that women give to the person they speak with. Then we talk about the use of hedges and epistemic model forms, and finally we will close this lecture by considering topic development. So concerning how much talk, we have two results of a recent research. The first result says, in a mixed sex conversation, when we have men and women talking to each other, the average amount of time for which a man talks is approximately twice as long as the average amount of for which a woman talks. Again, so men talks twice the time that women talk, which is unlike the stereotype. The second result is that boys talk more in front of the class than girls do, and they absorb more of the teacher's time. So these two results are against what we already believed. It's against our stereotype that women spend a long time of talking. This result shows exactly the opposite, that in a mixed sex conversation, men spend longer time talking, and in classrooms boys talk more in front of the class than girls do. And because they do so, because boys talks a lot, they absorb more of the teacher's time. Now, based on those two results, and as a consequence of this research, changes to teaching style in the UK have been made to distribute the amount of a class time talk and the teacher's time more fairly, so that girls are also given some time rather than giving all the time to boys. We move to considering interruption, and as another research shows the extent to which men interrupt women, which is the point we need to consider. To what extent men interrupt women? Now, the research shows that men interrupt women more than they interrupt other men. Now, this indicates that men act as if they have more right than women to speak in a mixed-sex conversation, and that women act as if they had less right to speak than men. I repeat this again. According to a recent research, in a mixed sex conversation, in the mixed sex conversation means that we have men and women talking. It is not men only, it is not women only, it is mixed. We have men and we have women. According to the result of this research, men tend to interrupt women more than women do interrupt men. So this indicates that men think that women have less right than they do, and the other way around. As I said, they indicate that men act as if they have more right than women to speak in a mixed sex conversation, and that women act as if they had less right to speak than men. So again, this is also against the stereotype that women speaks more, and that women are chatterboxes and they interrupt men. Back channel support, which is another point which we need to discover. Before we go into details, we need to understand what does back channel support literally mean. Back channel support is the verbal and non-verbal feedback listeners give to speakers, that when there is a conversation between two people and one of them is talking, the other gives the speaking person some feedback. That suppose I'm talking and there's somebody else who is listening to what I say. The listener will always need to give some feedback to the speaker, so that the speaker can either continue or stop talking, and the feedback will also show whether the listener is following what the speaker says or not. So research suggests that women are often more active than men in supportive roles in conversation. Now, what the listener usually do when he gives feedback is by saying things like yeah. So when somebody is speaking to you and you want to make him feel that he is saying good things that you are following, you say yes, yeah. So those are those words which are feedback to the speaker, so that he can either continue or stop talking. Sometimes you just nod, you just move your head, yes, yes, yes. So this nodding is also another supporting feedback for the speaker, so that he either continue or stop talking. Sometimes it is just enough to smile for the speaker so that he understands that yes, you are following what he says, so that he can either stop talking or continue talking. Sometimes when you frown to the speaker, he would understand that you are not happy with what he says, so that he either stop or ask you to comment on what he has said. So frowning and using other body language or facial expressions, smiling, frowning, or gestures that you give to the speaker by your eyes or your mouth by smiling or frowning. So this is what we meant by back channel support. Now the point behind this is that research found that women are much supportive than men. When there is a conversation with a woman, she is more supportive than a man, because she always either notes, she always says words like yes, yeah, and she says or she nods her head, or she smiles, or she uses gestures or facial expression to indicate to the speaker that he is whatever he says is okay. Now the use of hedges and epistemic models. Before we start, we need to know what the word hedges mean. As a definition, hedges are linguistic forms which dilute an assertion. The word dilute means make something weaker or dissolved in another thing. So hedges are linguistic forms which dilute an assertion. So if I have a sentence or an assertion in which I say he is a good student, instead of using this assertion, I can use hedging word like he is sort of good student, he is like a good student, I think he's a good student. So what I'm doing is I'm using a linguistic form to dilute the assertion, to make my assertion less strong. Now women usually use hedges and epistemic modal forms. What about modal auxiliary verbs or epistemic modal auxiliary verbs? Those verbs can be used to indicate that you do not want to sound completely certain about something. And the words that we usually use are should, would, could, may, or might. An example of this, when I say, for example, I travel tomorrow. If I want to make this less strong, I would say I may travel tomorrow, I might travel tomorrow. So those auxiliary words or those modal auxiliary verbs indicate that I do not want to sound completely certain about something. So I'm using those words to indicate to the listener that I am not really sure. So according to certain research or studies, we have found that women exploit hedges and epistemic models forms more than men. So again, this is another evidence that men and women differ in the way they speak, in the topic they talk about. So women usually use more hedges and use modal auxiliary verbs than men do. Why do women use hedges and epistemic forms? Now there is two opinions regarding the answer to this question. Why do women use hedges? Why women use epistemic forms? Number one says women are less confident than men and feel nervous about asserting anything too strongly. That's why they always say, I think, it is a kind of, it is a sort of. So they are trying to dilute the assertion by using those hedging words. Again, women prefer to avoid conflict and to allow disagreement to take place without explicit confrontation. So why do women use those auxiliary words? Why do they use those hedging words? They do not want a conflict. They do not want disagreement. They want to avoid explicit confrontation with other people. That's why they always using I may do this, I might do that, somebody should have done this. So they are using those auxiliary verbs to indicate that they are less sure about something. So those two controversial opinions are not necessarily true. You can take the side of one of them, but not necessarily both of them. Sorry. Another point where women and men are different is the topic development. Now, men and women develop topics differently. Men and women vary in the topics they choose to discuss. Let us take an example of women. Women usually select more personal topics, while men prefer more impersonal topics. Now, what are the examples of personal topics? It is the family relation, the kids, the emotion, their friend and friendship, while men prefer more impersonal topics, often based on factual or technical knowledge. Example of this is talking about football, talking about cars or home improvement, etc. Now, this is the end of this lecture. Hopefully next lecture we continue talking about language and gender, then we move to the following chapter. Thank you very much.